Hello, I'm Nathan, and welcome back to my gaming table. Today I'll be talking about a game called Ludus Latrunculorum. As you might guess from the Latin name, this was a game popular in ancient Rome, in the ancient Roman Empire, dating back to about the 1st century BCE, or at least that's as far back as we have evidence mentioned in literature as well as artifacts found for this specific game. I'll break down the name a little bit more later on, but I wanted to start with the first part, ludus, as an interesting term all in itself. Ludus could apply to any sort of game, pastime, or type of play, including the play of children, whether that's in formal games with rules or just playing around. It could apply to board games, games with dice, sporting activities, races, chariot races, including the circuses of ancient Roman fame, gladiatorial combats, and poetry competitions, among other Ludii, typically used in the plural to talk about games of that sort. Ludii could be staged for public entertainment, to mark a particular holiday, or even as part of ritual activities as an offering to the gods through its play, including the Olympic Games being a type of Ludii. Ludus was also used for schools, particularly children's primary schools, where children often could be said to go to play, and for gladiatorial schools. So a ludus could be where gladiators go to learn how to fight in their ludi. Ludus also is the root of the modern English word for the study of games, ludology, and was used as part of the name of a seminal work in that field, Homo Ludens, by Johann Huizenga. There'll be links for that down below. I also have a link for a site with the Ludii game engine. It's a multi-purpose game engine that took that name. So again, it's a term with many facets. Now the second part of the term, latrunculorum, is the conjugated diminutive of a root word latro, meaning a highwayman or mercenary. So latrunculus, the diminutive, refers to a more common thief or brigand. So latrunculorum, of Brigands, and Ludus Latrunculorum is specifically the game of Brigands. Now you'll see in its play how that might be viewed as, say, a skirmish between bands of thieves, trying either to wipe each other out or to capture the opposition's leader. There's a lot of spatial control, a lot of planning ahead, controlling the field, much like, say, in chess or checkers, with that kind of gameplay involved. Like checkers, or like those games, it's also on a grid board. They can be 8 by 8, the same as chess or checkers, but boards have also been found or referred to as latrunculi boards, being 8 by 7, again 8 by 8, 9 by 10, 10 by 11, or as big as 12 by 12 spaces. Correspondingly, rules and sets have been found with as few as 13 pieces and as many as 30 for that larger board and a larger, more complex game. There are typically 2 colors of pieces for 2 players, which helps this stand out from other kinds of Ludii, even just looking specifically at board games. There was another well-known called Ludus Duodecim Scriptorum, which had 3 rows of 12 holes, so it stands out as distinctive. And Ludus could be used to apply to dice games, particularly those with knuckle bones or astragaloi. Evidence for games specifically being Latrunculorum includes boards that were either fancy artifacts in wood, gold, silver, etc., as well as boards simply scratched onto stones, drawn on shields, or drawn onto cloaks. Similar to, as you might know from one of my previous videos, Nine Men's Morris is another game popular at the time. So it seems pretty evident this was popular amongst soldiers. And again, the kind of spatial control and combat themes fit it very well. Another specific item that shows that a game is Latrunculorum is the capture mechanic, which was referred to in the 1st century CE, specifically in literature, as when 2 surround 1 and they are borne off the field. This is referring to the flanking or capture mechanic of the game, where if 2 pieces of the same color flank or surround a piece of the opposing color in a straight line, that centerpiece is removed from the board, captured and lost. You may recognize this as a similar mechanic to some other spatial strategy games like Toffel or Hneftafel, a Norse game, or Feel, a Irish Celtic game, both of which I'd like to talk about later on this channel. There are several different versions of Latrunculi with similar but slightly different movement mechanics. And the one I'll be talking about here is called Kowalski's Reconstruction, created by Władysław Jan Kowalski. It specifically does not allow pieces to jump over one another, whether to capture or simply for maneuvering, nor to move through one another. So when a piece is blocking a particular row or column, it cannot be moved through. This is the initial board setup for Kowalski's reconstruction of Ludus Latrunculorum. It's actually a very simple game to set up, and you can make a set yourself like I had, just drawing on poster board with a Sharpie. The board is 8 by 12, that is 12 spaces wide on the two opposing sides where the two players sit, and 8 spaces deep. The back 12 spaces are all filled with the 12 regular pieces for each side, lined up on the back row. And then the 13th piece, the leader or ducks, is separately marked. In this case, I put an X on the bottom of these stones and flip them upside down so they're clearly visible. That piece is placed on the second row on the 7th space from the right for that side's player. So they're almost exactly opposing with that diagonal space. Other than these stones, again, should be of 2 colors, darker and lighter, and the board, that's all you need. Play then starts with one player deciding, or one player going first, decide who it is amongst yourselves. That player should take the dark colored pieces in that side of the board. Play is easy enough to describe, but there's a few specific rules. Taking turns, each player moves one piece, any number of spaces that it can move. Pieces may only move on the rank or file, that is, in straight lines, never diagonally. A piece can move, again, any number of spaces until it is blocked by another piece, whether of its own color or of an opposing color. So no jumping over or moving through other pieces. And that'll become very important in terms of the spatial restrictions, because a lot of the game hinges on blocking possible paths for your opponent and hemming them in. The capture mechanic is as I described before. If a piece is surrounded on 2 opposing sides, that is in a straight line, by 2 pieces of opposing color, it is captured and removed from the board. However, this capture needs to occur by a movement of an opposing piece. If instead a piece intentionally moves between 2 pieces of opposing color, it is not captured. It is safe. And it's best for avoiding confusion if you declare when you move a piece between opposing pieces to say it's safe or not captured, just so it's clear and you don't think something was missed later. I'll note also that though they can only move on straight lines, pieces can capture across diagonals. So this is a valid capture as well. These 3 diagonally. And you might think, okay, I can see how this would happen on the sides, it's harder, but what about in the corners? Is that piece safe from capture? No, because it can still be captured if the 2 adjacent sides to the corner are filled by pieces of opposing color. That piece is captured and removed. So that was covered. Now for the complications. It is illegal to move a piece back to the space it occupied on its previous turn. That is, if I move this piece here on one turn, and the opponent moves this one here, preparing to capture, I cannot move this piece directly back to the space where it started the last turn. That is illegal. I can move it here, 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 or here, or laterally any of these spaces, just not right back here. As you might guess, this is not as much of a restriction on movement in the early part of the game, but later on, when there's fewer pieces and fewer spaces to move to, it can become a real limitation and cut down on the possible moves of each player. Next thing that's important to note. A player may not repeat the same board configuration 3 times in a row. Here's how that works. If I move this piece here, this one moves here. Let's say on the next turn I move a different piece here to block that capture. Now, we'll say the opponent goes here. This piece can now move back to where it was because there's been a turn intervening. It wasn't on subsequent turns. However, let's say, well, obviously the opponent could take this capture here, but let's say they don't. I can move this piece back. Now, this exact board configuration has been repeated twice. It's occurred twice in a row in consecutive turns. Now, say we continue playing, and I move this piece, this one, I move this one back. It is now illegal for me to move this piece back to this square, because that would be repeating this same board configuration, the beginning configuration, 3 times. Again, not much of a restriction early on when you've got many pieces and many movement options, but as it goes later on, fewer pieces, fewer movement options as players have hedged one another in, this can become important. In particular, when duxes are trying to avoid capture, that'll come up next, players may be tempted to repeat certain board configurations, but if the opposing player is watching and catches them, they can catch an illegal move and say, you can't do that, you've done it 2 times before. You've had that particular configuration. So it's something to watch for and catch, and limits legal moves later in the game. Now, the ducks I mentioned, capturing it, that is the goal of the game, is to catch your opponent's ducks. But this cannot be done by simply flanking, by catching it on 2 sides. A flanked ducks is not captured and not removed. Instead, the ducks is only captured if it is immobilized, that is, blocked on all 4 sides that it could move. If on a player's turn their ducks cannot move, that player loses the game and the other player wins. Note also that the ducks can be immobilized, including by pieces of its own color. So you don't want to get your own leader hemmed in and trapped by your own pieces. That would still count. That would still be a loss for the light player. Again, in practice, it's rare in a game that a ducks gets captured, especially early on. There's lots of defenses, lots of movement angles. And later on, as both sides have fewer pieces, if both have played well and paid attention, it's less likely the ducks will be captured. But it is possible. The problem comes in strategically that while you're trying to keep your leader out of trouble, you may be losing your other pieces to protect it. That gets us into the alternate winning conditions. If, toward the end of the game, it is impossible for a side to capture the other's ducks, that is because it has too few pieces, or the configuration of the board allows for a free enough movement that the ducks can continue to escape without repeating board positions. In that case, the players have to agree that it is now no longer possible. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it has to be proven. But at that point, the player with the most pieces remaining on the board, that is the fewest captured, is the winner. And usually if one player is down to their ducks and 2 defenders, they can no longer capture the opponent's ducks, and they probably have the fewest pieces as well. So that's one of the more obvious ending conditions. Finally, if it's not possible to capture either ducks, if a player is left with no legal moves, that is, if all their remaining pieces are trapped and cannot move, or they cannot make legal moves that would repeat a previous board position or repeat a position 3 times in a row like I mentioned before, in that case, the player with no legal moves on their turn loses the game. That's also a possibility, especially if you manage to capture and block in all an opponent's remaining pieces. So any of those are possible during play. And I'm hoping to touch on a number of those rules in the sample game. One more thing I'd like to mention. If you've seen it before, or if you see it later, you may note that Ludus Latrunculorum is very similar to a Greek game, ancient Greek game called Petteia or Pessoi, referring to small stones or pebbles, which were named after the playing pieces for the game. Most reconstructions of Ludus Latrunculorum, including Kowalski's reconstruction, make heavy reference to Petteia. including its movement rules, capture rules, and again, the two colors of stones, light and dark. The difference being in Petteia, typically the game is played until one side has captured all of the opponent's stones, like in checkers, and there is no leader piece or ducks to be captured. But otherwise, most of the movement and capture rules are the same, and you'll notice in those games the board setups are very similar. Let's go through a game of Latrunculi, and that should demonstrate how these rules work in practice. Now, once again, the dark-colored stones go to the player who is playing first. So, for their initial move, let's try... As long as you don't release the piece, again, similar to other games, it's still valid. Let's do that as a starting gambit. In response, Light will choose another position. Already we're watching one another, looking for advantage, looking for lineups. How about that? Try not to think too much and make this game overly long, but again, there's a little bit of space for deep thought and caution. Light's going to decide to start the capture cascade. Took out one of green's by surrounding it. Okay. In response... Not so easy. It's hard not to just immediately sacrifice pieces. And I know you watching there are going to be going, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? There are a lot of reasons, and sometimes it's just because I can't see those moves. Notice here we're creating a blockade, hedging off one side of the board. So if the opponent can catch that and break it somehow, they'll be better off. How about that? Taken. Protected. Not really. I'm playing very poorly for the dark side here. Fine. Oh, almost missed that. Notice here, I just moved this piece to the space. it cannot escape back to this direction. The best it can do is slide in between these two pieces. It can't go back to where it was previously, which is not safe anyway, but it would not be a legal move. All right, we're getting a little bit of the backboard involved. Good. Try to take advantage of this. Blockade. This piece is a little bit hedged in now by this diagonal wall. Don't want to give anything away. Ah, here we go. Threaten. With this one I'll say safe. It's between these two, but it moved there voluntarily. Not safe anymore. I'll go back to your rank. Ah, threatened. Forced it back at least. We're watching this side. Threaten. You're going to stay there, protecting this flank of the ducks. Oh. This one's safe here, but doesn't really want to move. Here. Trying a different avenue of attack. Boxing these pieces a little bit. Oh, no, got that. That was a bad move. This one is now free to slide over here. And we've got this piece in threat. Not to mention the ducks is in some trouble. This is dangerous. Keep this one here. What do I do now? Yeah. Potentially, this is actually a legal move. Light can move their ducks down to capture. However, it also puts them deep into enemy territory and blocked on two sides. With this one able to move over, and this one then able to complete the block. So that is not a great move, even though it takes out this potential danger. So this one's going to take the bait, take that out, close the trap. And now we're back again with fewer pieces on each side. It's Light's turn. Nope. Okay. Threaten or block off. Nope, that won't help. Ah, there. No, you can't go there. Not great options. It's not too bad. Threaten. Counter. Notice that a lot of these spaces are bad options for this piece. Here it's caught, here it's caught, here it's caught. It can back up, it can slide over. That's going to prolong safety. You know what? I'm going to keep chasing you. That leaves you stranded, so you're locked. Take that out. Safe. The leader sneaking up from behind there. Can't get me here. Block. Protect. Remove. Blocked on two sides. Ooh, that would be terrible. Moving there would actually give the opponent a double capture. So do not want to do that. Oh. Threaten. We're going to take a single capture. Got you. safe. Here's another good point. I can't simply move this piece out and then come back to capture the next turn. And light would know this. Moving here is unsafe, moving here is unsafe, moving here is unsafe. I can go all the way out here to potentially threaten. Fortunately, that means that there's no bar to me doing this. We're one turn away from capture. Dex has got to escape. It can threaten at the same time. Again, bad space. Safe space. Slide over there. Nope. I'll take you. At this point, if green loses any more pieces, it's going to lose the game. And trying to figure out how to outmaneuver an opponent that has twice your number of pieces is very difficult. We'll play it out, see if they can come up with anything. Hey, there you go. Nope, that's not great. Ah. Hey, wasn't paying attention. What that? Nope, that's still, well, okay, it's too late. Gone. Green loses. Bad strategy on my part playing on their side. But you get the general idea. And there were a few cases where, again, I couldn't take back a previous move in a subsequent turn. We didn't run into any of the cases where the repeated board position was a concern. But neither player got trapped too badly. It got to be a game of attrition and missed opportunities. So hopefully that gives you a clear idea of the play. And that is Kowalski's reconstruction of Ludus Latrunculorum. I don't have much more to add after that. There are other variations, of course, with differing numbers of pieces, different move rules, and different sizes of boards, which I encourage you to try as well if you'd like a larger or smaller game or one with a different strategic challenge. But otherwise, there are other Ludii, both from ancient Rome and from afterward, including an ancestor of backgammon. And if you're also interested, I mentioned the older Greek game that Latrunculi was possibly based on, Petteia or Pessoi. So check those out as well. Thank you very much for watching. And whatever you play, have a great game.